Hey guys, welcome back to the internet. So it's been a little while since we had, just a typical Entitled Parents story video. I think that what's really happened is that not only have the videos about narrating these stories kind of become boring to a lot of people, but actually telling the stories have gotten a little boring to a lot of people too. Because I've noticed it's a lot harder to find decent stories now than it was 6 months ago, back when this was really trending. So that's why we've really branched out and had all different kinds of stories. But let's start off with Confidence Destroyer. So I work at the service desk of a large, well-known, big box hardware/lumber store. On this day, I look up to see an entitled mom with 4 high school-aged girls, all on their phones looking pretty disinterested. They walk up to my register and ask for a store manager. We are asked to field these type of questions to see if it's just something we can take care of ourselves and not bother the mods. I say, sure, I can do that. What is this regarding? The mom slightly elbows one of the girls forward, who hands me a letter, which is a request for donations for the high school, which we get about 3 times a day. I immediately say, oh, Dan is our manager who handles donation requests. He's not here today, but I would be happy to deliver this to him when he arrives and have him call you. This response normally gets a, thank you, and then the person leaves. But not this group. The entitled mom side-eyes me. Oh, I see. So you're saying we can't see a manager? I say, of course you can. I would be happy to call a manager, but all donation requests go to Dan. Would you like me to call another manager to speak to you? The mom says, to speak to me? Me? As she points to the girls. I can see she's working herself up to make a scene. I pick up the phone to call a manager to get myself out of this. The phone is busy. As I'm holding the receiver to my ear, the mother leans in, screeching, I'm trying to teach my daughter how to stand up for herself while she is requesting donations. Do you understand that? I'm empowering my daughter to deal with confidence destroyers like you. Now, her daughter to this point had not said a word to me. This mother was the one speaking and in charge of this little interaction. Those girls could have cared less about speaking to a manager. As a matter of fact, the girl is just standing there, and now her blank stare has changed to a complete embarrassment at her mother, and her eyes started to fill with tears. I've been nothing but kind and by the book, so this insta rage was pretty shocking. Says, and now my daughter is crying. How dare you? Yes, you have Dan call me. And they charge out the door. One of the girls makes eye contact with me, and you could tell she was mortified. I can only imagine how many times that poor girl has witnessed these types of things from her mother. I'm sure the mother believes being a pissed off person will get her what she wants. And in fact, she's teaching her daughter and her friends to be abusive bullies, who believe everyone's out to get them, so you have to get them first. The next day I handed our manager the donation request without saying a word. As ironic as it is, I've noticed that the parents that seem the most aggressive and being overly protective of their child usually end up raising the weakest and least confident children because they're trying to do everything for their kid. Whereas the parents that kind of just let their kid grow up on their own, that's not always a good thing, but the kids usually turn out a lot more tough that way. Funny enough, as I've mentioned a couple times recently, I've been working at a haunted house for the Halloween season right now. So I'm basically just part of the staff. I go work there in the evenings, usually on weekends, but I have noticed whenever I see kids that are crying and just scared to go into the haunted house, they are often accompanied by parents who seem very overprotective of them. Because if you're a parent and you shelter your kids from everything, of course they're going to be afraid of the real world when they're actually forced to face it. But yeah, moving on. You've been randomly selected. So this happened about 3 years ago while going through an airport in the US. I walked through the metal detector. Something must have beeped and they needed to pat me down. After a thorough pat down, I put my shoes on and started to walk over to grab my bag. A TSA agent stops me and says, You've been randomly selected. Please step into the body scanner. I was polite, but said that I really didn't want to get into the body scanner and asked if there was another way. The agent said that I could get a pat down. I said, well, I just got a pat down, so... They angrily told me to pick an option. So I took 2 steps backward, to the woman who had patted me down 30 seconds ago and spread him, again. While she was patting me down, I asked her if she found anything new. She stared daggers at me, but let me go. Man, the TSA is so awful. But it is kind of funny when you get to just kind of mock them and make jokes at them while they're patting you down for the second time. Executive assistant says someone stole her oven. So I used to provide support for a hedge fund. While the company had some big accounts, the office itself was pretty small, about 5 people. However, given the amount of money at stake, they couldn't afford to be down for a second, and they ran into plenty of relatively minor issues on a daily basis. That's why they needed a full-time IT/tech support person. When I started there, they had severely outdated machines and equipment. After the fund managers complained enough, I finally convinced the owner, a fight-you-to-the-death over a nickel kind of guy, to upgrade the workstations. The fund managers' machines were updated by a certain financial news software data company which may have been started by a now former mayor because we had a contract with that company. The new contract included new-ish machines for the fun guys. I also installed some extra memory we purchased on our own because 128 megabytes? Seriously? Granted, this was Windows XP, but 128 megabytes was just barely the recommended, and they couldn't open more than one Excel sheet while the financial data app was running. A minor purchase to upgrade to 512 megabytes, and the managers were pleased as could be. Along with the new fund managers machines, we ordered some workstations on the cheap for myself and the EA when the new tech was coming out. Gotta love those clearance sales. This was all done while the boss's EA was on vacation. I had moved over her accounts, files, etc., so she would have a seamless transition when she returned. Or so I thought. When she got back, she called me over and started screaming that her oven was missing. She says, "My oven is gone, put it back, I need it." I was like, "What oven? We don't even have a kitchen in this office." She says, "My oven, the one I used to warm up my lunch." So me, confused, I don't know what you're talking about. Then she started pointing at the monitor and shouting, "My oven, my oven, my oven." I remembered how my cat liked to lay on my old monitor on my computer at home, and it finally dawned on me that she was referring to her old monitor. Along with the new workstations, we got new LCD monitors, as they were finally becoming affordable. She wanted her old CRT monitor back because it generated enough heat that she had been using it to warm up her lunch that she had brought from home. I told her the old equipment was gone, but she didn't like that answer. She made such a fuss that the boss came out to see what she was screaming about. When I explained the situation, he just rolled his eyes and walked off. He didn't even want to hear it. Since there was nothing to be done about her monitor, I just showed her which folders her files were in, as opposed to the file earthquake that she had on her previous desktop, and helped her get used to the new OS. However, she continued to give me death stares every day until a month later when we convinced the boss that a small microwave and coffee maker would benefit the office and make people more productive. I mean, if you have to use your big fat ancient monitors to heat up your lunch, that sounds like you live in some third world office. I feel like we were better at generating heat with our electronics back in the day, though. Social influencer banned from airline for life for demanding business class upgrade. A Cathay Pacific passenger was kicked off a flight and banned for life after attempting to get upgraded to business class. An influencer claims she was sent an email which allows her an upgrade from premium economy. The email says, "We appreciate you taking the time to write and share details about your upcoming trip back to Hong Kong from New York City. We understand that you are boarding CX-865 from New York to Hong Kong on the 7th of June. As a social media influencer, we welcome you on board our flight and truly hope that you will have a seamless flight experience with us. Because of your social network, we would like to formally extend a business class upgrade to you on the day of your flight, should any tickets be available at check-in. An agent will update your boarding pass if there is availability. Feel free to document your travels with us, highlighting the comfort, service, and quality of your travel experiences. We encourage you to utilize our hashtags. We look forward to welcoming you on board. Yours sincerely." She explains that before traveling, she emailed Cathay Pacific asking for an upgrade on her return Taiwan to New York ticket. After this, she received an email confirming that I was eligible for a business class seat, if tickets were available at check-in. While traveling through an airport in Taipei on May 30th, she showed the email, only to be declined the upgrade at the airport. On her return journey from New York on June 7th, she tried again, only to be told she was not allowed to board. She said that she waited at check-in for 30 minutes, after which a member of staff accused her of trying to get an upgrade with a fake email. They then canceled her ticket, citing fraud, and banned her from ever flying with the airline. The influencer was then forced to pay another $1,400 for her return flight home. After returning home, she contacted the airline to clear up the misunderstanding and asked them to refund the cost of her new flight. However, Cathay confirmed that the email was fraudulent, and that the only way they could review the case was if she could provide the embedded information of the email so they could trace it. I bet they felt really clever when they were writing up that email to themselves. I wonder if any company actually does that. I mean, maybe if you had like a celebrity special guest flying on your airline, then you might reach out to them and do that, but it's not like they're just gonna give that to every social media influencer that flies on the plane. At least, they've never given one to me. Entitled Dad plays the cop card on a federal agent. So just to clarify a few things, this is not my story. It's my cousin's, but I'm going to write it as he told it to me, in first person. So background, I worked for the Russian Internal Affairs in their OMOH. It's basically our FBI SWAT. I'm not very high ranking, but I do have some authority in the department. Anyhow, onto the story. So I was in a small town called Voronezh, in the southwest. I'd been out celebrating my recent promotion with a few friends from school, and had a nasty hangover in the morning, so I was in a bit of a foul mood. Right as I turned in along the main road, I noticed the traffic. It's well known that Russians are terrible drivers, so I just assumed that there had been some kind of accident. My headphones were in by this point, so I couldn't hear the Mercedes pull off the road behind me and onto the sidewalk, about 3 meters wide. There were steel barriers along the curb, which don't stretch the full way. It was a G-Wagon, pulling right up behind me before blasting the horn and storming out of the car. The conversation after went something like this. The entitled dad says, "Get out of the road." I say, "This isn't the road, this is the sidewalk, back up." "But I have to get my kid to school, move out of the way, don't you know who I am?" So me, not in the mood. "No, and frankly, I don't care. I'm not in a rush. I'll stand in front of you all morning." Says, "Look at the sticker." Sure enough, he has an MBA sticker on his widescreen. He probably took an official car to drop his kid off, wanting to save gas money. I say, "That doesn't give you the right to drive on the sidewalk whenever you want. Back the F up, now." He says, "Watch your language, my child is in the car." He gestures, and sure enough, the entitled teen is playing on his phone, just chilling in the back. He hasn't been listening, and probably knows more swear words than I do. At this point, other people have started to notice the commotion from their own cars that weren't going anywhere. I say, "Sir, I'm not moving." He says, "I need to take my kid to school now. Move out of my way or I'll arrest you." So I'd officially run out of F's to give. Out of principle, I was going to stand on the pavement anyway, but now I was not moving out of pure spite. I say, "Oh, what are you going to arrest me for?" He looks very displeased with my attitude. "Obstructing an officer of the law. Now get out of the..." I say, "No." I don't think he was expecting that. He stormed back to his car, and I thought that would be the end of it as I turned away. But no. He revs his engine before pushing up behind me until the bumper knocks me off balance. I say, "Are you out of your frickin' mind?" He rolls down the window to shout out of it, "I need to take my son to school." I reach into my back pocket and pull out my badge, which even from a distance is visible, and the entitled dad goes visibly pale. I didn't have to say anything else before he spun the gears and reversed away. In the end, he had to rejoin the traffic jam at the back, and so spent even more time in that hellhole. Thanks for reading. The only thing that can take down a fake cop is a real cop. It's always funny when somebody tries to play off their big authority, only to be called out by the people who actually have that authority. Alright, well, the question of the day is a bit different than usual. Instead of stories, we have people who live in vacation destinations. What is the most irritating misconception about where you live? I live in Las Vegas. Listen, what happens in Vegas stays on the internet, and also in the stories of every local who saw you do it. Don't do stupid stuff. And then another. I live in Las Vegas. People are occasionally shocked when they hear I work at a school. I've been told several times, I didn't even think Vegas had schools. Yes, because Vegas consists of the Strip, all of the casinos, and that is it. Nothing else, no cities, no houses. Just the hotels, casinos, bars, and strip clubs. You know, that's the whole city. Not all of New York City is as crowded as the touristy areas. The vast majority of us aren't navigating through Times Square as part of our daily commutes. But mad sympathy to those who actually have to. You know, New York City does have a pretty cool charm to it. It's very, like, old-fashioned, and there's so many movies that have been filmed there that, you know, it's kind of just sort of like a Hollywood setting. So, I mean, it can be cool, but I think that living in there would just be a nightmare. It's just so crowded, so much traffic, like, nowhere to park, insanely expensive everything. Tokyo here. I could name a few, but the one that always gets me is the misconception that people are going to accept, or even respond politely to, outrageous weebishness. If you roll up in a Shibuya with a Naruto headband and a Hello Kitty backpack, trying to communicate through a handful of anime catchphrases, while creepily leering at schoolgirls, people are rightly going to give you a wide berth. For those of you who don't understand this one, I'll just let this picture describe it. It's kind of funny when people who are just obsessed with anime think that Japan just looks like a real anime. I only lived there for a little while, but it's a common misconception that Hawaii is a great place to live. Don't get me wrong, it might be the most beautiful place on earth, and there are many, many exceptional things about living there. But it's terribly expensive just a grocery shop, let alone try to buy a house. Many people just live with their parents and grandparents because no one can afford to move out. So many houses and apartments and condos are bought as vacation properties, which drives up the price. Then, houses and apartments in residential neighborhoods have a revolving door of vacationers coming in and out, which is disruptive to normal life. People on vacation care very little about how much noise they're making, etc. It's a catch-22 because so much of Hawaii's money comes from the tourism, but tourism is making it impossible for locals to buy homes. Yeah, I went to Maui a couple years ago, and I thought it was funny because, you know, there's grocery stores and food places all over the island, but there's a Costco right in the middle, and it seemed like almost everyone just goes to that Costco. That's like the only place that's busy all the time because it's the only place that has any cheap groceries. But again, cool place to visit. I wouldn't really want to live there. I live in California. Non-Californians be like, "Oh wow, I love all the palm trees and the beaches. You are so lucky." I live in the middle of the desert. Nothing but dirt, Joshua trees, 70-mile-an-hour winds, and sagebrush. Yeah, California is a big place, and some places are San Diego, and some places are Death Valley. I lived in Amsterdam for 5 years. I realized pretty quick for the rest of my life, saying you lived in Amsterdam means people assume you're really into weed, illicit drugs, crazy parties, hookers, or a combination of all that. In actuality, most of my going out was for drinks with colleagues. I don't like pot, and only ever went to the red light districts when someone visiting me was curious enough to see it. I'm also well aware that Dutch people who don't live in Amsterdam usually hate it. This is typical in small countries, where one city dominates the international perspective, but frankly, I won't join in your complaining about it because living there was a highlight of my life. I feel like Amsterdam is just the Las Vegas of Europe, or maybe the New Orleans. Los Angeles, specifically Hollywood. Literally everything about it is underwhelming. The Walk of Fame is cool for 2 seconds. Grauman's Chinese theater is smaller than you'd think. The Hollywood sign is just a big sign, and no, you're not going to run into celebrities walking around. All the while, it's incredibly crowded, smells terrible, and you have to dodge costumed street performers in droves. Edit: the celebrity comment is specifically regarding tourist areas, expecting to see celebrities walk around the touristy part of Hollywood. Yes, you'll see them everywhere in other parts of LA. I should also say that I actually really like living in LA. I live in the Valley. As others have said, the dining is terrific, the beaches are great, and there are always something to do. But man, F Hollywood. I mean, if you could live in LA, and you were so rich that the taxes weren't making you homeless, and you never had to deal with the extreme traffic, then I'd say maybe I would enjoy living there. At the Bahamas. What's funny is when people come to the main island and are surprised to find out that the entire place isn't just a clean, beautiful, sandy, tropical island no matter where you go. It's also funny when they find out the murder rate, which is high in comparison to the size and population. Other popular misconceptions by people who know nothing about us are that we are, and I have seriously heard every last one of these, loincloth-wearing savages that fish all day, drink out of coconuts, and live in straw houses, and sleep in hammocks. That does, however, perfectly describe the native people who were killed off by the Spanish hundreds of years ago, soon after the Western world was discovered. Someone seriously asked me, "Do you guys ride dolphins or are they just friends?" My response, "They are our main form of transportation and decreed by King Aquaman." Isn't it fun to live somewhere that a lot of people talk about but not actually go? I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, so you can imagine everyone just thinks the whole city is just completely religious. But if you're really curious, Salt Lake City is not that religious anymore, but a lot of cities like far north and south of it kind of are. And then the rest is just very like barren deserts and mountains, and there's a whole bunch of state parks. So most of Utah is like skiers, hikers, campers, people who love the outdoors, and then there are a lot of religious people too. But anyways, what are some misconceptions about places that you live? That about does it for today's stories. I'll probably have another couple videos this week, so look out for that. I'm still around, and thanks for watching.